What do you do when the storm doesn't just threaten you, but finally breaks everything apart? What happens when the only thing left between you and survival is a piece of broken wood in an endless sea? And how do you hold on to faith when everything you depended on is gone? The storm had already taken its toll. For days, the ship had been driven helplessly across the sea, with no direction, no control, and no certainty of survival. Darkness had covered the sky, and fear had settled deep into every heart on board. But now, something was changing. Not the storm, the moment. It was the 14th night. 14 nights of relentless wind. 14 nights of crashing waves. 14 nights without rest, without stability, without knowing if the next wave would be the last. The sailors sensed something different. As the ship drifted through the darkness, they began to feel that land was near. They couldn't see it, but they could sense it. The rhythm of the waves had shifted. The sound beneath the ship was changing. So they took soundings, measuring the depth of the water. 20 fathoms, a little later 15. The water was getting shallower. Land was close, but that didn't mean safety. In fact, it could mean something worse. Rocks, reefs, a violent crash that could destroy the ship instantly. Fear returned, stronger than ever. The sailors dropped 4 anchors from the stern, trying to slow the ship down, praying for daylight. They didn't want to move forward in the darkness. They needed to see where they were going. But not everyone was thinking about staying. Some of the sailors had another plan. In secret, they lowered the lifeboat into the sea, pretending they were going to lay anchors from the bow. But their real intention was clear. They wanted to escape. Leave the ship. Leave everyone else behind. Save themselves. In moments of crisis, true intentions are revealed. Fear can push people to act in ways they never expected. Survival becomes personal, loyalty fades, and decisions are made in desperation. But Paul saw what was happening. He understood immediately, and he spoke to the centurion and the soldiers with urgency. Unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved. It was a bold statement, because up until now the sailors were the experts. They were the ones everyone depended on. Without them, how could the ship survive? But this moment required a different kind of trust. The soldiers didn't hesitate. They cut the ropes holding the lifeboat and let it drift away. The escape plan was gone. There would be no abandoning the ship. They would face this together. As the first light of dawn approached, Paul did something unexpected once again. He encouraged everyone to eat. For 14 days they had barely touched food. Fear had stolen their appetite. Anxiety had drained their strength. But now, with the final moments approaching, Paul knew they needed energy. He urged them to take nourishment, reminding them that not a single one of them would lose even a hair from their head. Then in front of everyone, Paul took bread. He gave thanks to God, and he began to eat. It was a simple act, but in that moment it carried incredible power. In the middle of fear, he showed gratitude. In the face of uncertainty, he showed calm, and it changed the atmosphere. One by one, the others followed. They ate, they regained strength. Hope was no longer just words, it was action. After eating, they threw the remaining grain into the sea, lightening the ship even further. Everything unnecessary was gone. There was nothing left to hold on to, except the promise. Daylight finally revealed what lay ahead. A bay with a sandy beach. It looked like a chance, a possible place to run the ship aground. The decision was made quickly. They cut the anchors, loosened the rudders, raised the foresail, and headed toward the shore. For a moment, it felt like it might work. But then the unexpected happened. The ship struck a sandbar. The bow stuck fast, refusing to move, and the stern was exposed to the full force of the waves. The sea pounded against it relentlessly, and the ship began to break apart. Wood splintered, structure collapsed. The vessel that had carried them this far was coming to an end. And then came a chilling decision. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was protocol. If a prisoner escaped, the soldier responsible could face severe punishment, even death. So to prevent any chance of escape, they considered ending the prisoners' lives right there. But the centurion Julius intervened. He wanted to spare Paul. Something about Paul had earned his respect. Maybe it was his calmness. Maybe it was his words. Maybe it was everything they had just experienced together. Whatever the reason, Julius made a different choice. He stopped the plan and gave new orders. Those who could swim were to jump overboard first and make for land. The rest would follow, holding on to planks, pieces of the ship, anything that could float. No more structure, no more control, just fragments. And one final effort. They jumped into the unknown, into the waves that had threatened them for days, into the very sea that had taken everything from them. But this time, it was different. They weren't drifting anymore. They had a direction. One by one, they made their way towards shore. Some swam, some clung to broken pieces of wood, some struggled more than others, but they kept going. And then, something incredible happened. Every single person reached land. Not one was lost. Just as Paul had said, the ship was gone, destroyed. Everything they had relied on had been broken apart and left behind in the sea, but every life was saved. Think about that. The promise was never that the journey would be easy. It was never that the ship would survive. It was never that everything would go according to plan. The promise was simple. You will make it. And they did. This story carries a powerful truth. Sometimes the very thing you depend on has to break. Sometimes the structure you trust cannot carry you all the way. And sometimes survival looks like letting go of what once felt secure and holding on to whatever remains. A piece of wood, a fragment of something broken, but enough to keep you afloat. Because in the end, it wasn't the ship that saved them. It wasn't their skill. It wasn't their plan. It was the promise and their willingness to hold on. This moment reveals something deeper about faith. Faith is not always about preventing the storm. And it's not always about preserving everything you have. Sometimes it's about trusting that even when things fall apart, you will still make it through. Even if the path looks completely different from what you expected. Even if the only thing you have left is something small, broken, and barely enough. Because sometimes that's all you need. The shipwreck was not the end of the journey. It was a transition, from control to surrender, from certainty to trust, from fear to fulfillment. And for everyone on that ship, it became a moment they would never forget. A moment where everything was lost, yet everything that truly mattered was saved. And maybe that's the message that still speaks today. Not every loss is defeat. Not every broken thing means failure. Sometimes it's part of the process that leads you exactly where you need to be. Safe, alive, and changed. Thank you for watching this video. If this story gave you a new perspective on the storms in your life, don't forget to like, follow Holy Path Insights, and share this video so others can be encouraged too.